Remember I said in the beginning of the lecture we're going to talk about two different ways of using the acrylic. One is piling on top, first floor, second floor, third floor. That's what we just talked about. Now we're going to go down in the basement levels. We're going to start adding lots of water to the acrylic to make it diluted. And instead of just putting it on any old surface, we're going to add a ground to make the basement juicier. Make sense so far? For some reason that made sense to me when I started talking about the house with the floors. Let's start with this concept of ground. A ground isn't necessarily a product that's called ground. There are some products called, there's an absorbent ground, that's here. And but I can take any medium gel and paste and I can make a ground with it. The term ground for me is applying, here's pumice gel as a ground. It's applying a product, in this case a gel with lots of pumice in it, on a substrate, anything, cardboard, wood, canvas, and changing, this is the key to a ground for me, is changing the way that surface will accept the paint. Does that make sense? I'm applying a product, not because of the way, the color of it, but I'm applying a product to change the absorbency of the surface, to change the way that surface will accept paint. Everybody agree? Okay, that means I can use any medium gel and paste and I'm going to get a different quality as I add the paint on top. As an example, before I get into the pumice here is 3 brush strokes, each one a diluted paint. Now when I say diluted, I mean, okay, here is phthalo blue fluid. I like to use the fluids for this. These techniques now are going to simulate watercolor washes. If I add a little bit of water, I still feel that glidey feel. Do you remember that kind of glidey feel that you guys felt with the mediums and gels? It's still going to plastic coat. I'm still going to be working with layers on top. I now want to go down in the basement. I have to add a lot of water. I'm talking 80% water, 20% paint. So I have to add so much water that it loses that glidey feel and sort of takes on the feeling of watercolor. I did that with a gold color here. So this is I call it a wash or a heavily diluted paint. And I did this with a gold color and I put it on 3 different surfaces. It looks like the same board. But before I put the brush stroke, I actually put a ground under each one. This one is soft gel gloss. This is gesso. And this is this absorbent ground product. Now, the key, look at how different the same brush stroke is. If I used the paint straight out of the bottle with no water, I'd get 3 glossy brush strokes. So this is a duet between 2 things, adding lots of water to the paint and having thought of, premeditated, what kind of ground I want underneath to get which effect. So this is a glossy surface and this is a very matte or absorbent surface. Anything that's matte is absorbent, anything that's glossy is non-absorbent. Okay? So if I see, can you see the gloss under here? Is this going to be absorbent or non-absorbent surface? Non-absorbent. And this feels like a piece of paper. The absorbent ground product is actually pieces of paper fiber suspended in acrylic binder. So you can make your own piece of paper on any substrate or any surface. And that's called absorbent ground. It's confusing because I talk about an absorbent ground and this product is actually called it. But this is very matte. And look at how even the wash or diluted paint goes on. When you have a glossy surface, it goes on very unevenly and creates an interesting technique. Interesting look. Gesso is gesso matte or glossy? It's kind of in the middle, isn't it? Well, guess what? It doesn't do the even and it doesn't do the interesting. So gesso is probably it gives you hardly any basement. A gloss coat kind of doesn't really make a basement. You're sort of gliding on the foundation there. But anything absorbent gives you a basement. Now, pumice gel, this is pumice. And the way that I made this was that I took coarse pumice gel. When I first saw this product, I thought, I'm not going to like it. It's gray, it looks like house product, I mean like a building construction material. There's two things that made me really like it. And I will show you. So here it is. Here is the pumice. And is this matte or is it glossy? Matte. So we know that it's toothy. We know that it's absorbent. Okay, I'm going to pass this around. And I spread it out over this piece of cardboard, and I let it dry overnight. Now it's a ground. Even though it's called pumice gel, that's what I meant. It doesn't have to say ground on it. I applied it, and now I have a changed surface. Not only is it very absorbent and textury, but also gray. So far so good. It's a pumice gel ground. Now, if I take, I'll just use this paint. This is the phthalo blue with lots of water in it. I made it into a wash. And this by itself isn't going to do much on this pumice gel. Watch what happens when I wet the surface first. I'm going to really wet the surface. Those of you that do watercolor, what does it do when my surface is wet, when I run a brush stroke over it? What does it do to the edges of the brush stroke? It softens it, yes, or it does a bleed. You could say it does a bleed. So let me make a little more paint here. Bless you. Okay. So here I've got a wash. Remember, it was about 20% paint, 80% color. And I'm going to have two colors blend into each other, so I'm going to mix another color up. With these grounds, I'm not going to use the color straight out of the bottle. It'll just plastic coat, and it'll take away the whole point of having a ground. This still feels glidey to me. I'm still adding even more water to get it really loose. Okay, now watch what happens. That's the perfect video response from a video. Okay, now let's see if I can get this to blend. I'll buy it. Sold. Now, if I wanted to get this blend using thick acrylics with, like not adding anything, it would take me a while to get this soft blend. And this also, the gray pumice is softening the colors. Look at how rich and bright these colors are. So if I was doing, say, a more of a realistic landscape, I mean, some of these colors, the modern colors, are just out of the natural realm. So if I wanted something more natural, I could use the pumice gel. I could get these washy effects. When this dries, then I could start using the paint in more detail.